So today is July 11, 2025. Our names are Angelica Riestra and Edwin Paz. We're in Granbury, Texas, interviewing Dr. Elma Gonzalez for the Voces Oral History Center. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for agreeing to be interviewed. As we said earlier, your recorded interview will be housed at the Nettie Lee Benson Library at the University of Texas at Austin campus. The purpose of today's interview is to talk about your life and career. Asking you some general questions about your early interest in science, your educational experiences, who helped mentor you along your educational journey, and then your faculty career as a scientist. Please share with us whatever you remember. Please know that if there are topics that you don't wish to discuss, you will not have to discuss them. Also, if there is something you wish to discuss, please let us know. If at any point you wish to stop the camera to get a drink or use the facilities, please also let us know. If you don't have any questions at the moment, we can begin with the interview. Great. So we can start out with questions about your early life and when your interest in science began. So we are curious, what were you like as a kid? Were you curious, observant, focused?
Very curious, interested in everything going on around. I guess that was true. Making toys to play out of things that weren't toys. Just a curious kid, just wanting to get involved into things.
And you grew up in Hebbronville, Texas.
So you were asking about...
where did you grow up as a child?
Yeah, and in a way that's kind of hard to do because I was 5 years old when we came from Mexico. And then we lived in a ranch. So that's in Hebbronville, that's way out there. And then we went to Hebbronville. And then we kept moving because we were going to work in the fields. And then we went from one rented house to another, but it was Hebbronville. And then we finally had our own house. Yeah, so.
And what do you think your parents' expectations were for you when you were young?
My current expectations are what?
What do you think your parents' expectations were when you were young?
Oh, no, they weren't very ambitious. I mean, place that had a room for a bed. My sister and I were sharing a bed, so that was an important one. And then later that I was going to school, and I wanted to go to school where it was close by. And then I wanted to read, and read every book I could find. And so things like that, not very fancy.
And did you have any role models that suggested you should go to college?
Yes, I did. Well, I don't know if role models specifically, but there were people interested in me who had been my teachers, or mostly teachers. And there were several people who said, you ought to be thinking about college, or are you going to college? And I would say, they said, well, we don't have any money. That's just what Dad said. But they weren't deep conversations, you know. There was a time when I was growing a little older when I would ask somebody I knew had gone to college, what is it like? You know, what will I be doing? Kind of thing. Not very deep.
And then, did you have any early experiences or people that shaped how you see the world?
How what?
How you see the world. Were there any early experiences in your upbringing?
You mean the role of going to college?
Overall, how it shaped your...
Well, I had very little experiences like that because I didn't know people who had gone to college or the teachers. And then you don't want to bother them. You don't want to make them mad at you for asking too many questions, things like that. That didn't happen so much, but it could have. any negative experiences, memories of that.
And then, what do you think first drew you towards science? Was it a moment, a question, or a way of thinking?
Well, I was thinking about that because I didn't really have a good answer, but I think my good answer is because science is interested in answering questions. And every once in a while, a lot of times actually, I would run into people and say, well, I don't know. What are you asking that me for? So I wanted somebody, me maybe, to answer questions.
And now we're going to move a little bit to the time when you were the brave soul as the first one in your family to go to college and then to pursue graduate school. So why did you decide to go to Texas Women's University in Denton?
Well, one of my teachers had gone there, and she had good things to say. And she had told me that it was known as the cheapest school in the state, the lowest tuition and stuff like that, and all sorts of things that came with the room and board, like getting your laundry washed. That's a big one. So there were little steps like that, and then I started talking to girls who had been to TW, and they liked it. Yeah, they liked it. You know, they were comfortable there and everything. And then Mom had to go and ask somebody whose mother had, the mother of somebody who had gone, and she wanted to know what her experience is. I said, well, they say they don't let the girls out of the college. Isn't that a good thing? And the mother said, well, yeah, I think it's a good thing, but she wasn't too sure. Anyway, kind of questions that didn't add too much, but it satisfied my mother. So.
And what do you think your college experience was like?
I think they were pretty much like everybody else's. I made friends. I had conversations. I had, according to me, deep conversations like about evolution, and argue about believing in God kind of thing. I was interested in that. I was interested in not being a believer. I'll put it that way. And it was fun. We didn't do anything. On Sundays, we would have saved little tidbits from here and there, and we all would sit down on the rocks in the garden and eat our leftovers and tidbits, and because we had no meals during Sunday, we had to figure it out. And we had stories to tell and things like that. It was fun.
And were there many Mexican Americans at TWU? And what about in your major?
Well, in my major, there were only 23 of us who, remember, we're all girls. Only 23 who were interested in science or interested in biology. They were much less interested in chemistry or physics. But we all knew each other. We took the same courses. And we gossiped about each other, just that sort of thing, just the toughest girl. Supported each other. We're glad when we made good grades. Some girls started thinking about maybe they wanted to go to medical school. I never did want to go to medical school. And then we would encourage each other. Well, talk to such and such a professor, and he'll tell you whatever it was. Things like that. Pretty dumb.
So 23, about 23 girls in the major.
Yeah.
Or women in the major. How many would you estimate were Mexican American?
There was only one. Virgie was from Houston. Virgie Garza. I wonder what she's doing now.
And who would you say mentored you during college?
Well, I was thinking seriously about, I mean, other than the girls talking back and forth, which is sort of mentoring, you get information. The one person that always answered my questions was Miss, forgot the name. I wrote it down.
You mentioned she was an influential mentor for you. So I remember you told me.
Can we pause just for a second? All right, we're ready.
Miss Hamilton. Miss Hamilton was a very interesting person to me because she had never married. She was older. She's an older woman. Good teacher. Very kind to the students. She would give you a word if you needed a word, of encouragement. She was interested in botany. That's what she taught. But she was also interested in fossils. So sometimes she'd push us into the car, take us in her car, and go all over the county looking for places where there was fossils. It was very exciting. So she was very encouraging and inspiring.
And who do you think helped you discover your potential to be a scientist?
Well, I think I definitely wanted to be a scientist. I think that was where I was kind of headed, but I didn't really put it into words. But what she said to me was always encouraging. And there were other people too. The department chair would also say something every once in a while. I would go in to ask about something, and she would just give me something encouraging about whatever it was. So it was never really a negative. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, it was just. I mean, we're all female students, and the administration favored that. So I mean, what's not to do?
And then now we're moving a little bit towards your journey to graduate school. So what did you research during graduate school?
Well, there was a discussion in the lab about what to do about some pictures that somebody had taken, the electron microscope. What did it mean? So there were one hypothesis was that they were peroxisomes, it's a little organelle that had been found in liver and things like that. And so what was it doing in yeast? And so all this back and forth, somebody said, well, maybe you could start there, Elma. I said, but I don't want to do electron microscopy. It's too boring. I said, well, there are other ways. So we talked about that, and I suggested maybe could we do it by biochemistry? And they agreed, I think. Anyway, the subject was over. And then I started asking people about that and see how it might work. And then I continued to pursue it.
And in terms of learning a little bit about how graduate school was like, do you remember any particular highs and lows during graduate school?
Well, yeah. I don't remember the highs, but I remember the lows. I remember one girl who was supposed to teach me to use an instrument. And she said, I'm not sure I can teach you that. In other words, you're too dumb to understand it. So I was shattered when I heard that. But, she wasn't such a smart girl, and she wasn't so nice, so I just left it and went on.
And were there other Mexican Americans in your graduate school cohort?
There were a lot of Puerto Ricans, and you couldn't say who was who. I don't think there were any Mexicans, though. And remember, New Jersey's very far away from where there are Mexican Americans.
And what about other women in your graduate school cohort?
Yes, there were. I had friends among people like somebody who was from New York, Brooklyn. Curious people with strange accent. Yeah, I mean, not many, but there were some.
And then how did you decide on Rutgers for graduate school?
Well, I had the problem of support. I needed money. I couldn't just go without. I mean, I had a little bit of savings from my having worked for 3 years, but they weren't very sufficient to. So I just waited to see what would develop. I mean, what would come, and eventually, what I used my savings for was to go to Russia. Very exciting. I had always liked reading Russian literature, and I was very curious as to what was it really like. Why did those people drown in teacups? The way I put it, because they have, those Russian novels were about mostly aristocrats that didn't know how to work and didn't know anything, and they had a problem. And the problem could have been solved by my mother in 50 seconds. Just they had no experience of life or anything, or work for that matter. So I wanted to go see what Russia was like. And I did. I loved it. I mean, I loved the experience. I loved the knowledge that I got, and the adventure, being followed by the KGB, that sort of thing.
So this was during your graduate school experience?
Yep.
And in terms of, because you did travel to New Jersey for your graduate school at Rutgers, how did New Jersey in the Northeast compare to where you were used to in Texas?
Well, it was different because Hebbronville was a small town. There were not many people with other kinds of experiences. Nobody went to graduate school that I knew of from Hebbronville. Some people were teachers, so they had schooling. And in New Jersey, I was in a graduate school that was considered, a good school. I mean, some people said it was one of the 7 sisters or the 5 sisters or whatever it is. No, it wasn't, but yeah, it was okay. I was good. You know about the 5 sisters, or the, Bennington and all those famous girls' schools that made girls into women that mattered, or something like that. It would be, and so I said, no, Rutgers is not like that. In other words, working girls, and not people that had money and a lot of encouragement to do things like that, which matters.
And what do you think your parents made of you going to graduate school? Were they encouraging? Did they understand what you were doing?
Who?
Your parents.
Oh, my parents. No, my parents had no idea what it was. It was brought them fear. I mean, she's going all that distance. What's going to happen to her? Who's going to be there to help her? Things like that. It's all about fear. It was all about fear. And so I got my mother to go talk to a woman whose daughter had gone to TWU, so that helped her kind of calm down about it. And about money, well, I said, well, Mama, I can get a scholarship. I know I can get a scholarship. My principal said there are rich people in the East that give out money for scholarships. That was a lie, but I mean, I didn't know that, but it kept my mother happy. I used a lot of reverse psychology for my parents.
Do you think they understood what you were doing on a day-to-day basis?
I have no idea, but I just let it go. But they were so happy when I came back home. Mother made all the best dishes that I liked, the calabaza con pollo and tamales and, her famous enchiladas and things like that. That was wonderful.
And did they get to celebrate with you when you graduated?
Yes, and I was trying to remember exactly what they weren't going to go because my dad didn't drive. All right, I think he might have had his driver's license, but he wasn't a very good driver. He was not trusting himself, and he had said he wasn't going to be able to go. So I was prepared for that, and then suddenly on graduation day, I walked towards the hall where we were going to come out. And there's this car that looked like my dad's car, and it was my dad and my uncle and my brother, and I don't know who else was there, one of my sisters. And I was so happy to see them. I was just started to cry, I didn't know that they were coming. So that was that. But they left right away. They didn't stay.
They had a long way back. Let's see. And what about during graduate school? Who mentored you during that time?
Well, we mentored each other in a way. It was a tough environment. I mean, our professor was demanding, but she was good to me. I mean, she was famous for being rough. I mean, what do you want? People would go into a bit of a, shakes because she said that the way she said it. I had worked already. I had been in the lab. I knew what I was doing in terms of the techniques and all that. So she wouldn't do that to me. I mean, she just didn't. So if she was angry or disturbed or something, she said, okay, what can I help? So she mentored me. I mean, in the sense of showing me a little bit of what the real world was like. It wasn't always nice.
And you were the third Mexican American female in STEM to get a PhD. What was that like, being on the forefront of the educational frontier?
I've been thinking about that because you've been asking about that, and I don't know what to say, except that I didn't believe it. Really, deep down, I did not believe that there were only 3 people, Mexican American, who had a PhD. I think there must be an error there. What about all those people who live in California, who live in Oregon, and aren't they going to study? Apparently not. So anyway, that was a quandary.
And did you know any of the other Latinas, Mexican Americans?
Before I got my degree? No. I met Diana Martinez, who was the first one I met. And I knew of her. I don't remember why I knew of her. Oh, because we'd gone to that, both of us had gone to a conference on minorities in science or something like that. So one day, it's over the Christmas holiday, I'm visiting my parents, and we had these long yards, narrow long yards, so, and I was looking for a plant I had planted. It was some kind of peyote type thing, and I was wondering if it had survived, or I don't know, I was just looking down. And I heard my name called, Elma, out from the street. And I looked up, and I hardly recognized her, but it was her. It was Diana. She was visiting her family in Laredo, and then came on a ride with somebody to Hebbronville because she knew I lived in Hebbronville. And I was so happy. And we have been very close friends ever since then, more than 50 some years.
So there was a sisterhood of Latina STEM professors?
So, well, from then on, she had taken an administrative role because she could make more money, and she was good at it too. But she wasn't doing research. She had left the research angle aside. And so we kept talking to each other on the phone and however we could, meetings or something, I don't know, about which way was better, what to do. And we consoled each other. Diana wanted to do good for the La Raza, she wanted to do something. But which was the best way to do it? And I insisted that the best way is to amplify the numbers, to get more students educated. That's where my dream about getting MARC or things started, because I don't think I could do it by myself. I mean, and I never had the belief that I could be the great scientist that won medals and stuff like that. It wasn't me. Because of my starting so low, just people who, like the time I was talking to my colleague, I think I mentioned that he was going on about good schools and this and that. And he had gone to Boston, what's the name of that famous Boston?
Brown?
No, it was an entry school. Grammar. Boston Grammar. It's notorious, or I guess famous, for preparing people who go on to make distinguished careers. So he was talking about that. I think he had gone to Boston Grammar. And so I said, oh, come on, Alan. If I had gone to Boston Grammar, I would already have a Nobel Prize. Because come on, I mean, you get a good start. People believe in you. Obviously, you have money if you're going to Boston Grammar. What's not to make you succeed?
But you were a great success, and that's why
Well, I had to work hard at it.
So it is possible?
Yes. Prove that it is possible.
Yes. How about you had your sisterhood of Latina colleagues. What about Latinos? Were there any Latino doctorates in the STEM fields during your time?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Were there any Latino doctorate students in STEM fields? So any Latinos with PhDs?
In what field?
In STEM.
In STEM. I was not near them or aware of them or anything. Okay, so they were... Okay, I graduated as third in my class in high school, which I always considered a negative. Should have done better. But the other two guys had gone on for doctor's degrees. They were MDs. And one of them was an MD PhD. This is Hebbronville we're talking about. Nobody else had done that. And my friend Baltasar was also very bright, and he had been doing research, but his father died, and he ended up dropping some of those ambitions because he knew he couldn't handle that. His father, and I think he was wrong. I think his father wasn't helping that much. But anyway, Baltasar went into pharmacy because it's a good field, pays you, and he thought, well, now that I'm a pharmacist, I can go to medical school. So he has to get over the negatives from not being able to get a letter of recommendation from the pre-med advisor at UT. And anyway, he got through and he went to medical school. Well, I'm not going to say that, but anyway.
Now, what about in your postdoc? Were there any other Latinos or Latinas in STEM that formed part of your support network?
Yes, we were very good friends, very close. We supported each other in every way. Would go every time we came home from college. We would, go to what's the name of that place? Bertas or something. There's a famous restaurant in Culver City. Not Culver City, Mirando City. The only famous restaurant that we knew of in our surround, and we all headed for there because great Mexican food. And we had fun that way. Balthasar died young. Frank was dead shortly after our 50th anniversary, graduation anniversary. So I missed him.
Thank you for that educational history. And after you completed your PhD, you then went on to pursue your postdoc at UC Santa Cruz?
Yeah, but he wasn't. Do you want to know more about that?
Yeah, so we're curious about how you transitioned into your career. So how did you decide to apply for a faculty position at UCLA?
Well, it takes even more steps than you think. I asked my professor, because she said, what are you going to do next? I said, well, when I came here to Rutgers, I thought I was going to teach in a community college because it's a big need for kids to go to community college and get on there, start their career started. And I was already not all that crazy about that idea because of what was going on all over the place. It was Vietnam. There was, people were killed at Pennsylvania State, or what was the name of that school where they... Anyway, so there's a lot of negativity around. And so I thought, well, I should maybe get a master's degree. That's what I told her. She said, what? People go to postdocs. I mean, she was like that. She was just spluttering into this, And I said, well, how do you do that? Postdocs. She said, well, you find somebody whose work you like, and you write them a letter, and you ask them if they have a room for you. And I thought, well, okay, I'll try. And I did. And actually I got responses from 2 people. And one was turned out to be a really famous guy. Whose name I just forgot. He won the Nobel Prize in 1972, so he was big. He had 2 labs, one in Paris and one in New York. And I had already gotten my fetish about Paris, wanting to be in Paris. And he wrote back and he said, I'm sorry, but I have too many applicants already in Louvain, which was his lab in Paris. And so later he told me he had 400 applicants, which I kind of don't believe. But anyway, that's what he said. And so he said, but you can come and interview in New York. So I went to New York, and I had a wonderful experience because it was he and his other 2 postdocs at the faculty dining room at Rockefeller University. Everything was gold plated. The backs of the chairs were engraved with the logo of the university, and the plates were engraved, and the same thing. And I was sitting there, this poor little girl that had just come out of a dumps, sitting with these guys who were famous, and then look at all this furniture and everything. I was just amazed. So nothing happened, but a lot had happened. I mean, I had been exposed to this ambiance. And although my knees probably were shaking, I mean, I got back in the bus to go back to New Jersey. So if you guys are talking about bravery, that was a moment of bravery. Which I never mentioned to you guys because you would have taken it all very differently. You would have said, oh, I'm not going to do that.
But it's helpful for your audience now to be brave. See? And what about for the position at UCLA during your postdoc? Do you remember what the application and interview process was like? How did you hear about the position being posted?
Well, that's a long story, and it's not a fine story. The Chicano faculty at UCLA, which were mostly social scientists, had made up their mind that there should be scientists in the faculty. They should be, role models. And so there was David Sanchez, and there was Rudy Alvarez, and there was, several people like that. And they put up somebody, I'm pretty sure that was what happened. There was 2 Chicanos who somehow showed up. They knew them, or there's somebody that they knew them. And they, encouraged them to apply to UCLA. It turned out that they were applying for a field that did not exist in biology at UCLA. And it was probably in a agricultural school or something like that, which UCLA wasn't. And they got such a shoddy reception at UCLA. I mean, they came to interview. At least one of them. I don't remember if there were 2 of them, in fact, no, or not. But they were very discouraged, and they went and reported back to Rudy and da-da-da-da-da. And they were furious. So these guys got together and went to the chancellor at UCLA and complained about the racism and blah, blah, what was going on at UCLA. Which is not racism when you know that the person is not prepared for what they're asking for, and, they're not going to do well. And and that was in the middle of my showing up, sort of, because Rudy Alvarez wasn't giving up, and he was the one who called me and did not want a job at UCLA, and I had nothing. I knew nothing about all that. I got it from Rudy. I got it from a couple of other people, but nobody told me about it, which is a good thing. I mean, I would have been really discouraged.
And what was the interview process like?
Huh?
What was the interview process like? So you got a call.
I got a call, and he said, "Are you willing to come?" And I was talking to the people in the lab, and I wasn't all that happy about leaving the work I was doing because, you had to leave it and then start it up again. And it was a 2-day trip. They wanted me there for a lecture one day and interview for the next day. And so they behind me, they said, "You have to go, you have to go, you have to go. You have to be the first one to get the job." So I said yes. So they paid for everything, of course. And I was given interviews. I gave interviews to 19 faculty. Everybody would see what kind of what kind of person was I? Was I real? Did I know what I was doing? And I gave a talk like all job applicants do. And there were people who told me they liked it.
Do you want to tell us about what the negotiation process was like?
Oh, so the first started with the department chair. He had a small budget, so he was looking at that. And I said, well, I'm going to need a centrifuge, and I'm going to need a spectrophotometer. And he started doing things with his face. And I said, but I can't do the research without this kind of instrumentation. So we kind of left it at that, and then people started coming in saying, well, there's something that you could probably use. And, it wouldn't take much to get it going again or something like that. I said, well, sometimes these things worked and sometimes they didn't. And then I got to be buddies with the Beckman salesman, because somebody had told me that once they went to a big show that they weren't going to sell those instruments, or they sold them at a very discounted. I can't remember exactly, but it was within my. So I immediately took the situation as truth, So and in fact, I made the budget the chair had. It was like according to times like this, where you get thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mine was $14,000. That's what they were going to give me for, and I had to make that work. And it was okay, back in those days.
And once you got your lab going, can you tell us about your research program? So can you tell us about the research topic for your lab?
Oh, the research topic. Well, I was working on a project at UC Santa Cruz, and I didn't want to let it go because I was the only one doing it, and I had ownership to the idea that, and I asked permission from my mentor at Santa Cruz if it was okay if I continued doing research at UCLA. He said, of course. So that was what came up, we got a publication out of that, and then I decided to write up a grant proposal for myself. But it went pretty smoothly. I mean, there was no big angst.
And what was that grant proposal on? What did you study in those early years?
I don't remember. I mean, the problem with plants' work was that there was no buy-in by NSF or anybody else. I mean, they weren't really interested. So the work had to be very novel or unusual or something for them to make it an exception. But the plant people wanted to work on corn, wanted to work on alfalfa. I forget what the really serious plant scientists should be working on. And basically, it wasn't anything biochemical or physiological. It had to be agrarian or whatever you call it, agronomy.
So then you transitioned to studying algae and...
Oh, that was another from heaven. Randy was visiting, my friend from University of Washington, and he had close ties with the people of the Office of Naval Research.
So you were mentioning to us you transitioned your research project towards algae. Can you tell us about that research?
Okay. So yes, I sort of I got a publication. In fact, my first undergraduate student in my lab was my co-author on the project that I had started at Santa Cruz, and it got accepted with no additions. It's no changes. That was the most proudest thing in my life. And I knew the editor, so he personally congratulated me. But anyway, so Randy was visiting. He liked to visit UCLA. And he said that the ONR was looking around for how to think about templating minerals biologically. And that's what this thing is doing here. This dates since those times that I was thinking about that project. So this is calcium carbonate. And calcium carbonate on its own always has this shape, right? It's a crystal. So you leave it alone and you're going to get that kind of structure. But the algae, who are immersed in a very alkaline ocean, have high levels of calcium carbonate around them. And they don't make this. They don't make this crystal. They make structures that are unique. And they cover themselves up with this little platelets. And then what they do that is also novel, that's what really excited me, is that they would take the Golgi apparatus. They take the Golgi apparatus, and the Golgi is huge in those tiny the cell itself is less size than a red blood cell. It's a tiny thing. And the Golgi fills it up. And the Golgi then brings in the carbonate. I can't remember exactly the molecular issues here, but it begins to assemble templates of plates that are perfect copies of every other plate in that cell. So this was exciting for the Navy because they thought, oh, we got a way to make directed crystals for particular, military uses, I suppose. I never really inquired into that, but we tried to think about that. And it's a very difficult question. I mean, you can't really get too far on it because I don't even remember all the details, but it was just a very difficult question. And I gave a talk at the national meeting of the ONR and their researchers. But I couldn't lie. I said, this isn't a project that's going to go far because you can't take genes to do what nature is doing here. Anyway, I mean, I was kind of cutting my own throat, but I didn't think it was going to be funded for very long, as long as we didn't have any papers coming out showing that we could do it. So there went a brilliant idea.
And it was a particular microorganism you were using, or a particular model system?
Well, what I know, I went on with the Emiliania huxleyi because of the people in Europe who were really interested in it. And I have a couple of papers on that, but I don't remember what we said about it. But it was discouraging. It was just discouraging because I really didn't, and I had a molecular biologist working with me, Dutch guy, and he wasn't coming up with ideas either. So if you don't have an idea, no research.
But that's a great question. So how did you learn what ideas were good and which ones were okay to let go of?
Well, one thing that you people do that is missing with the kind of stuff that we do is that you have history in your favor. You have ways to isolate things because everybody has done it. You have things that are already cloned that you can use in this kind of work where you're using organisms that have never been studied biochemically or in a cell way. Everything has to be started from scratch. And not everything, in fact, very little of it is going to work out. So that's when the heartache begins. And I kind of saw that. I said, I'm not going to bust my you-know-whats trying to get a research proposal through those sour-faced guys. I mean, they're already ready to tear you apart because you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not... The way that the grant went in, the first grant that I thought I could get in, went to something like 20 different reviewers. I made that number up because I can't remember how many went, but half of them were oceanographers, and the other half were molecular biologists. Who wins in that scenario? Nobody, right? Because you don't have the total tool of a basket of tools that you need to do the work. You know, it's like people working with Drosophila. You know, you want to do something with so and so and so and so already did that, and he did that, and he sequenced that, and so you start in the middle where you got the tool ready to work.
But that's where your bravery kicked in.
I guess so. I mean, I won't. I saw it as I'm no fool. I'm not gonna succeed here.
And was there any particular research finding that you remember being excited to discover it in the lab?
Well, I got papers published. No, I don't remember uniquely anything in particular. I mean, the students were, the postdocs were interested and excited, but I didn't think it was such a great. I mean, I was ambitious, and I had delusions of grandeur, I guess. I mean, I wanted to be really good. And that's just maybe not a successful thing, and then not leading necessarily to success.
And how did you build community or a support network during the time you were a faculty member at UCLA?
Any opportunity. I mean, somebody who was writing a proposal needing a little help with something that I knew about, or cells. I knew biochemistry. Some people in that department didn't know any biochemistry. Working with students, collaborate with them. I don't know, some of my best friends knew nothing about my research, really. So it's hard to say that it all comes from their way of research. Judy Danielle was my best friend on the faculty, and she was a developmental biologist and looking at zebrafish, something or other. And I just knew nothing about that, but great friends. And very supportive of each other.
And what about in your department? Were most of the faculty members supportive, or some in particular within your department?
Well, there were some people, the old-fashioned people, I guess. I mean, George Ladies was a great friend. We were co-teachers in plant physiology at one time. I was a co-teacher with somebody doing cell biology, Cascarano. He didn't know much about plants, but it didn't matter. Yeah, I mean, chances you take. And it works out. You help them, they help you.
And in terms of the community outside of the sciences, were there other faculty in other departments?
Well, there were the Chicano studies people. I mean, there was something to do with them. I really had no real interest in the mechanics of sociology or, that sort of thing. I mean, I support him, and I said, oh, yeah, that's interesting, and what's going to go with that? And, but kind of vague, like, I couldn't help them. Even though they kept saying they did, I did, but I didn't.
But you did cross-campus sometimes to build your community there.
And we met at the faculty center and had a beer or two or something like that, yeah.
And do you think that your ethnicity or gender ever came into play either with faculty members or students?
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about that.
And in terms of what do you think kept you engaged over the long haul of your faculty career?
I don't know. I liked it. For one reason or another. I mean, it was fun to talk to scientists because they aspire in the same direction.
So this is Edwin Paz continuing our interview for the Voces Oral History Project with Dr. Gonzalez. So we've discussed about your career. We'd like to know about your overall scientific journey as a first generation in STEM person. Along your schooling and career experiences that we have discussed so far, we'd like to learn more about your actual experience. So during challenging times, what aspects of your life experience or culture did you draw upon to help you get through the tough times?
Well, it's hard to say. My parents, for one, they always believed in me, although they didn't understand any of it. But they wanted me to be successful in my terms. And then, and the rest of the family, they were still alive. You know, even the ones in Guerrero, which is our town where we originated, they're still relatives on my ancestry what do you call it, app, I guess, where we report where we came from and what our genes are and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of people interested in genealogy. And my family originated part of it in Spain because they were thrown out by Queen Isabella in 1492, I guess. And then the other side of the family came a little later, but they came as soldiers, and they intermarried with a lot of the Indians. So in my genes, there's 50% Spanish and 50% Indian.
And so in terms of your life experiences, what helped you draw upon those experiences to help you through those really tough times, maybe during your career or during graduate school?
Well, it's inspiring to know that you come from people who had aspirations, that they fulfilled them, that they had the wherewithal intellectually to do the hard things. That some of them actually aspired and completed degrees. I had one uncle when I was young that was mentioned all the time, Lopez. My mother's last name is Lopez. Who had gone to medical school and had done very well, and he was a doctor in New Orleans. That's all I knew about it, but that was very nice to know.
So did you lean more on analysis or gut instinct when it came to big life shifts?
I don't know. I mean, I analyze everything, but things don't necessarily work the way you've analyzed them. In fact, my sisters accuse me all the time. Oh, you wanted to be analyzed, or do you?
Can you take us through your analysis process in general?
Well, it's very, I mean, like I keep telling my brothers and sisters is that you work, you save money, you put it to work, you go on, and the next step, you save some more. That's analysis. And that's how you survive.
Is there a way of seeing the world that helped you stay steady through complexity?
Gardening. That's it.
Can you tell us about that? About gardening and how it keeps you steady?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I didn't do much gardening when I was a student, but I started when I was a postdoc because I was living in this really old, degenerate house. Well, actually, that's not true. I mean, even when I was a little kid, I was interested in gardening. I had, we living in a ranch that was really derelict, and somebody had made a pile of garbage that they didn't know what to do with, pieces of metal and stuff like that. And they had, before our time, they had decided to roll a piece of hot wire around the whole thing so that the animals, the cows, whatever, didn't injure themselves. Well, by the time we came to live there were no cows roaming around there. And I analyzed the situation, and I said, well, you don't need to have any water around it because there's no cows to come and hurt themselves. So I started planting seeds. I planted watermelon seeds and peanuts, and anything that I thought might germinate, that might grow, beans, potatoes. And if it didn't take too much water, I would have something to show for it. And so that was my start as a gardener. Never really was successful because things didn't go all the way to get ripe, and there was always the winter and the this and the that, and my parents weren't really interested or supportive. They just thought it was crazy to try to do something like that. I was 6 years old. So that was discouraging. And my next attempt at gardening was back in Hebbronville. But the water in Hebbronville is incredibly salty. It kills everything it goes into touch with. And so that was no success. So I'm learning important lessons here. And then finally, I bought a house in Culver City, and that was perfectly growing climate. You could pretty much grow anything you wanted to. And I took out a 3x3 square out of the front yard and planted stuff there. And it did okay. So I kept on doing other pieces of the yard.
And that's Culver City, California.
Yes.
Okay. So,
can I take a minute here?
Sure.
Can you sit up a little bit in your chair? I know you've been sitting there a while. There you go. Great.
Getting tiring.
Yeah.
How did you come to trust your judgment, especially when others might have disagreed?
It didn't really matter what they thought. Why would it matter if you know you could do it? I guess the implicit here is that I was able to trust my own ability to do things. And I don't know how you do that. Just because I have it doesn't mean everybody's going to have it. But when we were doing MARC, some of my lessons were about that. I don't remember doing it explicitly, but I wanted to install in you the truth that you were capable, that you could do things.
So what kind of work or thinking gave you a sense of quiet pride, not loud recognition?
Well, little things like getting a paper accepted without revision. Well, I was thrilled. Just little things. I gave a lecture at the Botanical Institute in Germany. I figured nobody in my line had ever done that.
So you overall had a great impact on the professional development of students in the sciences at UCLA through your leadership role in helping to create a program via the Stokes Alliance Initiative, and then as director of the MARC program. Can you describe how you took a leadership role to help create and run these programs?
Well, I was lucky, I think, because I had good friends in high places to a certain extent. Dean faltering here. Who was the Dean of Sciences at the time I was MARC?
I'm not sure.
Dick something. He was my best friend's husband. Judah Lingiel was married to him. Dick. What? Not wise. Anyway, I went to him and I told him my idea that I felt that there was an opportunity in money in the federal government that we could access by showing, interest and good work, that we could provide some support for minority students. And my model was, or the one thing that seemed to click for these people was that the faculty was excellent, the university was great, the students were hardworking, they were ambitious, and there is something to be made with that. And to keep them interested, to keep them going.
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the process involving your leadership role as a MARC director? Maybe a little bit about the grant writing that you did in order to get funds for the program?
Well, again, look, there were people already at NIH. There were several Latinos at NIH who immediately agreed with not immediately, but they agreed with my thesis about, we have good students, they're ambitious, they can work. And instead of working at McDonald's, we can give them stipends so they can work in the lab. And Iserling, Dean Iserling. And he totally agreed. He said, "Oh, Elma, I'm a dean. I can make centers." Okay, you can make a center. That I started with not with MARC. I started with CARE, Center for Academic and Research Excellence, and they gave me one person that would help me with mentoring. So, and she was good. She knew how to do. That was a really good skill. She could take your, what do you call it at UCLA? You call it assessment. How far you gone into your project, into your major, right? You get all these courses. She could assess the usefulness of all those courses you took and where you were on the way to getting your degree. That helps us, gave them confidence, made them, see how progress was possible.
So you're talking about a program coordinator at CARE?
Yeah.
That helped with that process?
Well, he wasn't CARE. Yeah, I guess it was CARE because he didn't name it. We named it together. Center for Academic and Research Excellence. And I felt the word excellence should be a part of it. It was important.
So overall, based on these experiences, what does real mentorship look like in your eyes?
Use what the students bring to you and inspire them to keep on wanting to do what they think they want to do. I couldn't make it happen. Students had to do it. I know it sounds trite, but it is what works. You had to convince the student that he has it in him to do it. I don't know how I did that, but, I just did somehow.
What are you most glad you passed on to others, even informally?
Did I? Well, yes, because, you look at Tracy Delgado. She went to Seattle, and in no time, she cloned MARC. She has a program going with practically no money. I mean, because she was in a private school, so I don't think she got much money from anybody. And I can't think of other examples, but I mean, there are little bits and pieces here and there that work because they first saw it in MARC or CARE working.
Are there any moments you remember that you think are important, that had an impact on you specifically? Moments with mentees?
Oh, I'm very proud of all of you. But there's Jose. This genius guy. And his mother coming to my retirement. I feel very proud about that. Yeah, I mean, this everybody different. Everybody wanting something to achieve, to go to graduate school. Some people didn't make it. I was very disappointed when I don't think you knew her, one of the earlier students, smart African American girl, and I found out later that her father had done something bad. I don't remember what it was he was accused of, but he was in jail for 30 years or something like that. I mean, it just sapped all the energy out of her. She just couldn't support that burden. And she left her intended career. She did something that was useful. Can't remember what it was. So somebody did something.
So you also played an important role in helping the development of the SACNAS organization, which stands for the Society for the Advancements of Chicanos and Native Americans in the Sciences.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how you first got involved in SACNAS?
Well, David Sanchez, I don't know if you ever heard the name, was a mathematician in the Department of Mathematics. And his building was on one side of the Court of Sciences, and my lab was on the other side of the Court of Sciences. And we would occasionally be headed for lunch, and we'd end up walking along the sidewalk at the same time. And he said, there's a group of guys, they're all guys really, who want to form a society for Chicanos. And there was a Chicano Studies Center crowd that was more important there. And I said, what does that mean? I mean, what is it? What's it do? He said, well, with a number of people, we can go to the senator's office or the somebody's office and tell them what we need. And I guess they did. I never made those trips, but they did. So I encouraged them to focus on science because I saw science as a way to educate more reliably, in a way. Because you look at this social scientists and it's all about opinions.
And you're one of the founding members of SACNAS.
Because I was there when the group started.
Can you tell us a little bit about the early days of SACNAS?
There's a picture up there. We had great meetings. I remember one little tidbit. I don't know how, but I was in charge of posters. I don't know why I was doing it, but I guess nobody else was. And they had accepted 17 posters to put on the wall. And the walls of the place where we were meeting were solid concrete of the kind that has pebbles in it and everything in it. I don't know what that's called. But there was no nail that was going to pierce that surface. We couldn't get the posters up. So then somebody told me that they should be put on a kind of a easel. So I said, well, okay, well, maybe let's go back and get some more materials at Lowe's, I guess. And so I went there, and either Lowe's was closed by that point, or I don't know what happened. And it still needed a whack to put something up on the wall. So somebody suggested a wine bottle. Not a good idea. It was such a series of mistakes and a series of just inability to do anything. And there were only 17 posters. And me and what's his name? He worked with Aguilera at one point, and then he was very active in SACNAS. He believed in the whole thing. And he was volunteering for everything, you know, so he and I were trying to do what couldn't be done, really. And it was I remember it was in Pasadena. And there were no real shops to go to. We had to borrow a truck, and then it turned out I couldn't drive a truck. It wasn't like a car, so I don't remember. It was just hysterically funny and tragic. I remember that part.
What were some of your contributions to SACNAS?
Well, they weren't interested in some of the contributions I tried to make. I mean, one of my projects that I started on my own was a census of the Mexican American community that were going into PhDs, and then by 1988, I had got a number. 1988, 89, something like that. Something like 60 something. And I showed it around because I thought that was some advancement and compared to what we had started with. And SACNAS just wasn't interested. They didn't do anything with the information. I thought they would Xerox it and pass it around to their committee chairs and things like that. Nothing happened. I was very disappointed. And I think it was from then that I kind of pulled back on, because they were really focusing on changing the name of SACNAS. And I just was totally against that, because we started because there were no Mexican Americans in science. Not Latinos, not Mexican Americans. If you don't tell it specifically, it isn't going to get known or heard or acted on.
Just to be clear, this census...
Can I have you sit up again? Thank you, ma'am.
You want a lot. Guess what?
Did it get caught up, the question?
No, it's good. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Do the question.
Okay, so just to be clear, the census was meant to count the number of Mexican Americans in...
Well, to see what progress we were making and why. You know, when you look at last year there were 10 and this year there were 2. I mean, or last year there were 10, now there are 15. And what I also wanted to know was who they were counting, because there were a lot of people who were calling themselves Latinos, who were born in Mexico or born in Argentina, whatever, and then, or maybe even started their education there and then came here and earned a PhD, and and they were fine. They're making it, but that wasn't happening to our raza. I mean, it was so difficult to get admitted. to be trusted, to be able to learn. So I thought if we get this data and show the funders that we can accomplish things by seeing a rise in the population, or if we fail totally, then don't give us any money. Let's figure out something else to do. So yeah, I did spend my time uselessly sometimes getting things like that done.
Now, looking at your overall journey, what have you enjoyed the most about your career?
Students. This is easy to say, but not all of them. I taught cell physiology, cell biology for many years. And I had everything. I mean, crybabies all the way. There was one kid I'll never forget. He would meet me at the door of the classroom. And he had signs in his hand. Dr. Gonzalez, did you see this article? And I had not even gotten the journal yet. You know, it's just like, but on the other hand, it was a good thing. I mean, I was proud of what we were doing.
What's one moment or one accomplishment you still feel proud of, maybe even more now than when it happened?
What?
What's one moment or one accomplishment you still feel proud of, maybe even more now than when it happened?
Well, when students that I thought at some point that they weren't going to make it, and they came down the walk and they had their PhD, and walking out on the that lawn that's in front of the women's gym, I think it is, where at one time the newly graduated people would come out there to look for their parents and everybody, and then being hit on the side by somebody trying to hug me, trying to find their father and mother at the same time to introduce me. So that was very proud. It was a proud moment.
So many of the people who know you and even those who initially meet you are impressed by your grit and tenacity. How do you think you developed it, and how do you think it contributed to your success? So, for example, you've mentioned that there was a particular piece of advice from your father. If you fall and drop something, just pick it up. Are there other moments or examples that contributed to your grit and tenacity?
Well, it's one that I keep telling people about, is that the time that I must have been 9 years old or something like that, pretty early on. My mother told me to take dad's treat. He liked to have rice atole, what do you call it? Sweet rice. Yeah. I can't remember what you call it. But anyway, Dad's favorite treat was atole, the arroz. And so Mother made it, and she gave me the little kettle. She said, take this to your dad. She wants his treat now. But just because of what time it was, she knew. And he was in the field chopping out weeds in a field of cotton. It was not cotton bolls, but just the plant was a cotton plant. And I got to where he was. He knew what it was that I had. So he stood up and looked at me, and I said, okay, let's have it. So I gave it to him, and I started playing among the plants. And suddenly I picked up one of the cotton plants, and there's this rattlesnake right under it. I knew what it was. I was so scared. I started jumping around. I said, Daddy, there's a snake down there. And he very calmly looks at me and he says, well, kill it. Kill it. Not wait a minute, don't get near it, no, kill it. And that's what you did to snakes, especially rattlesnakes. And I'm thinking, I'm supposed to kill my own snakes? And that was true. He expected me to kill my own snakes. So does that fit the question?
So do you think, so people are impressed by your grit and tenacity. So how do you think you developed it through episodes like that?
Well, like episodes like that, my dad making me do it. And I love my dad.
Did you intuit that when that happened? Did that occur to you then or later?
No, I intuited that my dad wanted me to kill my own snakes. That's what I did. I didn't know.
In that moment.
At that moment, yeah. I mean, it was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous, but I guess he thought that I was prepared.
Are there other examples that contributed to your grit and tenacity that you can share with us?
Well, I don't know if this is a good example, but okay, so I graduate from college. I find a job in Dallas to take on. I don't have a car. I go home to Hebbronville. I said, Dad, I have a job. It's a good job, but I have to have a car because I have to drive to work. And he said, but we don't have any money. Which he always said that. But Daddy, it's a good job. I could pay for it, you know. I mean, I was going to make $400 a month. That was a big amount of money in 1962 or whatever it was. And so he didn't want to see me cry. And so he said, okay, let's go. Let's go to see what we can find. So we went downtown where there were 3 car agencies that sold cars. And I knew the one I wanted to see first because it was a friend of mine, father had given her a Mustang for her graduation. I just fell immediately in love with the Mustang. The 1965 Mustang was a gorgeous car. And so we ran out of tape. Is that what happened?
No, I don't know what that beep was.
Oh.
It came from over there.
Okay, my best story. So my dad says, well, we don't have any money. He kept saying that. So we walked in and we talked to the salesman, and he said, well, it's $2,400 for the car. And then you have to pay upfront, you have to pay $300 to the agency that lent you the money. So basically, I had no chance. You know, I didn't have any money. And I wasn't going to get money in a hurry. So he didn't like it that I was so sad. And so he said, well, let's go across the street. He said, there's cherry people. And he knew the man who owned the place. He had worked for that man. And so we walked around the show store, the place where they show the cars. And I just hated the car they were showing there, the current model. It looked like a turtle to me. But then because Dad knew the man, and they were talking about old times and the work and horses and whatnot. And I'm listening, and my father finally says, okay, well, we have to move here. And so Mr. Forbes says, well, no, he said, there are things you can do. I said, like what? He said, well, one thing I could lend you the money for the down payment, and then you could pay me back in payment installments once you start working. And he said it's good math. And I thought, yeah, it is good math, you know, because I was gonna be paying $70 some a month or something out of my $400. So that wasn't too bad. So my dad started, he said, oh, that's interesting. And he was already about ready to make a deal. And I said, no, Dad, we have to go back across the street. Because that's where the Mustang lives. So I told the salesman, I said, Mr. Forbes over there says he can do this. And he said, I've never heard of that. And I said, well, will Mr. Ellison be able to do this? And he said, I don't know. He's not here. I said, can't you call him? And he called him. And I don't know what else happened there, but Mr. Ellison said, yes, he could do it. My father was known in the town for a very hardworking man, incredibly honest, caring. And I was known as a good student. And those things worked to make it happen.
So would you say that this episode taught you also about negotiation as well?
Definitely. And I did a few negotiations in my time. Well, see, I think it has to do with this thing that you guys were asking me about, the courage thing. Because if you're afraid that you're gonna be turned down, you're not gonna follow through.
So what would you hope stays with people after this interview?
I have no idea.
What messages do you have for future Chicano/Chicana and other women scientists?
It's too late, I think. I mean, this is a different world we're talking about. I mean, the world I'm describing is a different world. I mean, now we have all these AI-generated shows for kids that show them how to talk and show them how to deal and show them all those things. Those are not the kids that I grew up with. Do you agree?
It's a different time.
Yeah.
What do you mean too late? What does that mean?
These kids aren't going to listen because daddy's going to pay for it.
Any other message you would like to leave us with before we end this?
I got to give you all.
I'm still a little confused about what you mean by daddy's going to pay for it.
Because that's what happens these days. Children don't wait for anything. You know, they come. These people that, people were not as poor as we were when I was that age. There were middle class kids, even among the Latino community. But even so, their parents didn't have the salaries that the parents later were able to get. And I just don't know for sure, but I think that's what would have been like, just somehow or another.
Any last advice for future students in STEM?
Work hard. And ultimately, that's what counts. You work hard. You do your homework. Stay home, and not go to the movies or whatever it is you go to, and work hard.
Okay, with that, this concludes our interview with Dr. Gonzalez. Thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this, because his talent, his time, your talent, your experience, your time.
Well, the truth is we're honored to be here because of your talent and your time and your hard work. I know a hard worker when I see one, and I don't see a lot. And my father's from Rio Grande City.
Oh, really?
And I've been to Hebbronville. I pass through Hebbronville all the time. My wife and my mother is from Hargill. So that whole area I was very touched and moved by your story because I understand exactly where you come from. What year were you born?
42.
So my father was born in 45.
My
I'm
brother
37.
My brother was 45.
So that generation, and from the valley, is it's just another type of person because, as my father said, it was the area of Texas that that everyone forgot about.
It's
We were the forgotten people.
No social security, no insurance anywhere that was worth anything. So if you got sick, you died. Nobody helped you.
My grandmother's from Camargo. She didn't get her first pair of shoes till she was 11. My grandfather was orphaned at the age of 3.
Camargo is very close to where I was born, in Guerrero, just on the river.
So I understand exactly where you came from, and I understand that nobody was helping anyone really till after the war when the GI Bill took hold. So the fact that you were already moving is tremendous accomplishment. And as a woman, my wife is also a PhD in history.
Oh yeah.
And when she was getting her PhD, only 2% of PhDs in history were Latina.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a proud moment that I'm sharing here, and I just want to thank you for all your hard work.
Well, I don't feel like I deserve all of that praise because I see myself doing what came easy to me, what I needed to do to feel that I had won, in a way. It's not easy, but it's what you can feel proud of. I mean, and that's precious thing, just you feel proud of something you accomplished. And I think that a lot of kids got denied of that. They couldn't feel proud because if you're told, don't worry, you're not gonna make it, or whatever, just forget it, son. Just forget it. I've heard that before.
Well,
I think that ends the interview. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.